Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Tuesday, February the 18th. It's lovely to have you guys in for another episode of the Prime Time program. We have a lot to discuss in a short week for us. I appreciate you guys allowing me a little bit of a respite, a long weekend. We're back. We're rejuvenated. We're feeling good. We're getting ready for the NFL Combine and all the excitement that will come with it, all the things that we will learn, all the people that we'll talk to. It sounds like that Dr. Seuss book. Oh, the places you will go. All the places that we're going is Indianapolis. Just the one place is where we're going is Indianapolis. Actually, we're going to owners' meetings too, but that's neither here nor there because we have just a few more days before we can actually advance the narratives around these players that the Tennessee Titans are going to be pursuing in the first round on day 2 and on day 3 of the NFL draft. We will have more information. We will understand more about these players' personality types. We will have a full medical evaluation by then. Then we can start the cycle of the pro days, the 30 visits, and then soon thereafter, it will be NFL draft time. I'm really excited. I'm fired up for our combine coverage. I know we're going to crush it. I'm looking forward to taking you guys up to Indianapolis with me and to share all the insights and information that we're able to learn over the course of that week, what is essentially an NFL convention. It's Super Bowl light for football people, and it is going to be a fascinating time for the Tennessee Titans because they sit at the head of the table right now as far as the draft order goes. Now, obviously, free agency will come between now and then. In fact, today opened up the window for players to be franchise tagged between today and March the 4th. Yes, March the 4th at 3 p.m. Central Time. I had to check my NFL schedule on the little. Does anybody still use the cork boards as I knock things off my cork boards? I post things on cork boards like I'm 100 years old. And it's, it's schedules, it's things like that. So I had to look over at my cork board. But either way, it's going to be an exciting time. It's going to be a fascinating time. And Mike Borgonzi is the figure to shepherd the Titans through it. So we're going to get into the career-defining situation Mike Borgonzi faces in his first NFL draft running the show. We'll talk about the best player, the safest player in the first round this year. And then if we have time, we'll get to a Gone Viral. If the draft conversation is substantive enough, then maybe we skip Gone Viral and just keep it on the football because I know I've deprived you guys of 2 shows already this week, and we've got a lot of good stuff to dive into over the course of this evening. Before we get started, I need you guys to share the broadcast around Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch, wherever you are spending your precious, precious time with us. It is precious, and we appreciate you for dropping in and stopping by. But we also need you guys to share the broadcast around wherever you are spending your evening with us. Please share the show. If you are hanging out on Twitter, please retweet it in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you are on Facebook Live, you can share now to public. That's in the bottom left. And if you're on YouTube or Twitch, I'm currently sharing to Facebook right now. You can do it across all those various platforms. Like the video, hit that little thumbs up button for us. We appreciate it. It genuinely does help us. We always appreciate the way that you guys support, show up. It's a community. It's a great one that we have here on the Primetime program, and we're looking forward to continuing to grow that and to bring all of you throughout the course of this fun and exciting offseason, this exciting time to be a fan of the Tennessee Titans, because while the football season was ass, the offseason carries a great deal more weight at this point in time, and it's no small thing that they have the opportunity to make career-defining decisions for Mike Borgonzi, for Brian Callahan, for players currently on this roster, and for the organization as a whole as they try and justify their new, I don't want to call it a palace to football because the football's been shitty over the course of the last couple of years, but the new Nissan Stadium, they're trying to get you excited about it. They're trying to put together a product that will make you excited about it and will make you spend more money to go see their product. And right now, that is that's a pretty far-fetched dream. But the combine, the draft process, free agency, the roster construction, opportunities. They provide you the opportunity to make those dreams a reality. And that's the part of the process that we're going to work through, or a part of the process that we are going to work through this evening. Welcome into A to Z Sports Primetime from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by the wonderful people at True Math Fitness in the Gulch. TrueMathFitness.com. Your first workout is free. As a Middle Tennessee resident, no workout ever recycled or repeated. Go to True Math Fitness today. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. We just had a wonderful meeting with our friends at Two Rivers Ford today. They're back on board for another year of Titans coverage, and they are excited about it, just as you would be excited by the car buying process. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, or online at tworiversford.com. By the Bart Durham Injury Law Group. BartDurham.com is where you go because you deserve to be paid. And Blair Durham and his team will help you accomplish that goal. Zen Sports, where you can bet on all your favorite major sports, basketball, hockey, all of the things that you enjoy. Pitchers and catchers getting ready to report here in the not too distant future. In fact, they may have already started that process in the lead up to this week. Anytime you want to bet, betting just gets better at zensports.com. Download the app today. So, you know that it's a pivotal season, pivotal offseason. I mean, shit, every offseason has felt like a pivotal offseason for the Tennessee Titans because they've been trying to get this thing back up to a place where it matters. The Tennessee Titans as an organization have not mattered really since about the halfway point of 2022. We understand the domino effect that was caused from the drafts that went poorly, the Bengals playoff game that was their best possible opportunity to try and compete for a Super Bowl in that previous window. That was then followed by the 7 straight losses in 2022. John Robinson's firing, Rain Carthon's hiring, Mike Vrabel's firing, Rain Carthon's firing. Now it's Brian Callahan and Mike Borgonzi. And they are in I don't want to call it unenviable, because there's plenty of people who would want the opportunity to get any NFL franchise up off the mat. This is a heavier lift than I think just about anywhere else in the NFL. It's been that way for 3 years at this point in time, and it has eroded over the course of those 3 years because they haven't really been able to find level. They haven't been able to find the bottoming out point. Well, they just found it because they're the worst team in football coming off a 3-14 season. So now they've finally bottomed out, and you say, well, things can't get worse, but they can. If things are not done correctly, if things are not done in the best possible way to rebuild this football team to a place where it can start to be competitive in one-score games, which is just the bare minimum at this point in time. Then can you start to feature in around the in the hunt graphic? Then can you start to have a conversation about this team as a wild card or potential division winner? Then can you eventually ramp this thing up in the cycle that you're currently getting ready to start to a legitimate Super Bowl contender? It's a long, long way off, but this offseason is going to tell us a ton about whether this group of people that's been put together and who have been working, I think, pretty diligently to try and get this thing back to baseline. We'll find out whether they're viable moving forward, if they're the right people to do the job that they have been put in these places to do. So with all that to say, you look at the career-defining situation that Mike Borgonzi currently faces in his first NFL draft, and that is, quite simply, the quarterback decision, the quarterback plan. The quarterback plan is the most important thing for the Titans to get right. The quarterback plan does not have to be accomplished in one offseason. I know that may seem counterintuitive, but the plan to rectify, to get the best possible quarterback play for the Tennessee Titans, given the landscape right now, draft, free agency, years to come, or otherwise, it does not have to be this offseason. This offseason is a part of the quarterback plan. They can either choose to advance the quarterback plan with, say, a number 1 overall draft pick, potentially Cam Moore to Shedeur Sanders. They can go that route if they feel that's the best in their best interest. They can elongate this situation a little further and say, no, we've been given a mandate, for lack of a better term. Hey, just get it right. Take the time that you need, operate with a degree of patience, show that you can be competitive, and you will buy yourself the requisite time to draw that quarterback plan out a little more, because there is nothing, there's not a single solitary thing that indicates that the Tennessee Titans organization must solve for the next 10 to 15 years the quarterback problem this April. Nobody said that. I know people want that, but feasibly, you have to consider what's actually available to you at that particular point in time. What's available to them are a couple of options. And we can get into those right after I ask you your Two Rivers Ford take. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch in the comment section. Let's start here. Would you tie yourself to a quarterback in year one if you were Mike Borgonzi? Would you, if you were a first-year general manager, go all in on Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward or any of these quarterbacks? I guess we can include Dart in the conversation if you want to, but I honestly think the exercise is best served for just the projected first-round players. Would you, if you were a first-year general manager of the Tennessee Titans named Mike Borgonzi, would you tie yourself immediately to a quarterback right out of the gate by drafting one, either first overall, or, if you trade with the Giants third, or if you trade with the Raiders sixth, or any of these things? Yes or no, would you tie yourself to one of these quarterbacks as a first-year general manager? That's your Two Rivers Ford take. It's presented to you by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer, online at tworiversford.com. Quality American-made Ford vehicles. Award-winning customer service is on offer. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com for more information. They make the car buying process fast, easy, and more fun. tworiversford.com for more information. All right. Would you tie yourself to one of these projected first-round quarterbacks? Nate Samuel says, probably not with this draft. Josh Sabata says, if I was sold on the talent, yes. Okay, I'm asking you, if you were him, not if I was sold on the talent, are you sold on the talent? I'm asking you, Josh, you make this decision, and everybody else that's viewing the primetime show tonight, are you sold on the talent of these two quarterbacks that you would tie yourself to them for the foreseeable future? We don't know what the draft board looks like, so we cannot operate in that space. We can play out this hypothetical, but I'm asking you, watching at home or in your cars or on your phones, wherever you're watching this evening, or if you're watching after the fact or listening back on podcast, whatever, would you tie yourself to one of these two quarterbacks, these two projected first-round quarterbacks? Because that's the question that's at the crux of Mike Borgonzi's first year. You have a couple of options here. You can go with the best available free agent quarterback, Sam Darnold. It's probably going to cost you $40+ million a year. I don't know if he's going to make 55, 60 like Dak Prescott, but let's just say 40+, and you've only got $50 million in cap space to spend. Doesn't mean that Sam Darnold is going to have a $40 million cap hit in year one, but you understand my meaning. You could invest in Sam Darnold, who's got one good year and two pretty shitty performances at the end of that one good year, who is going to hit the market, theoretically, if he doesn't get tagged, but is more likely to hit the market. You could go all in on the best available free agent quarterback this year, Sam Darnold. One. You could go to the second option, which is the end-of-career vets. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. Right now, Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr are not available. They're under contract with their current teams. I'm talking about on February the 18th. The options that are available to us: no Carr, no Cousins, no Stafford. All three players under contract right now. There may be some movement there, but right now, that's not the case. So let's look at the options that are. Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers are in that second bucket. Those are options that the Titans potentially might explore. The third is the next round of reclamation projects. So who's the next Geno Smith or Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield? Well, you have quite a few. Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Daniel Jones. 4 quarterbacks under the age of, I think they're all under the age of 28 at this point in time. Daniel Jones is the eldest among them, and he's like 27, maybe going to be 28 by the time the football season starts. So that's the next bucket of quarterbacks. Right now, we have 3 options before we even get to the draft. So Mike Borgonzi could go, and you can always explore, the Joe Flacco, the Jacoby Brissett, but let's talk about starting quarterback options right now. Best available free agent, kind of washed towards the end of the career vets, but have obviously accomplished 2 Super Bowl champions in Russ and Rodgers. And then the 4 potential reclamation projects, the next round of quarterback reclamation projects that could be available to have. Then you get to the draft. If you're Mike Borgonzi, you have to ask yourself this question, and it was a very well thought out hypothetical that Jordan Reed of ESPN posed with us on the radio show the other day, because this is exactly the kind of stuff that we were talking about with him when he joined us on the radio show on Friday.
If I give you number 1 overall, are you sticking and picking? Are you trading out? And if you're staying, what are you taking?
Oh, man, you put me on the spot. Yeah. I think this comes down to one question for Mike Borgonzi and one question only. Do you want to tie yourself in year 1 to one of these quarterbacks? And if it were me, I would take Travis Hunter just because I feel most comfortable about him. He's my number 1 overall player, and I think he's such a rare talent. You just can't pass on a player like that. But if he's comfortable tying himself to a quarterback in year 1 of his regime with the Tennessee Titans, Cam Ward would be my pick, just because I think the traits, the upside, I think he's just a complete package of what you want at the position. And I just think a lot of people spend way too much time with trying to project these guys into certain schemes, whether he fits a Callahan scheme, playing on time, being accurate and in rhythm, just because, like we saw last year, if you're a great coach, you really cater your scheme to the quarterback that you feel comfortable drafting.
With that.
So that is Jordan Rodgers of ESPN. You can check out the full interview on the podcast page, wherever it is that you download your podcast. You can simply search The Buck Rising Show. We're going to have a lot more great Combine interviews coming up. We're not typically an interview-heavy show, but Combine is an opportunity for us to flex a little bit, and we have some exciting stuff planned for you. So check out the radio show wherever you get your podcasts, or you can listen to us live from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. Quickly, A to Z Sports Prime Time is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com. Get your dream address without the stress. Get the Intel edge you need to succeed at GaryAshton.com, the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators. Would you tie yourself to one of these quarterbacks in year 1 if you were Mike Borgonzi? Me personally, no. And it's not because I don't think the quarterbacks are good. I think that Shedeur Sanders has clear and obvious talent. I think that Cam Ward has clear and obvious talent. You would be ignorant to say that these are 2 players who cannot project to at least be functional NFL starters at some point in their career. But all quarterbacks, every single last quarterback is subject to the situation that they land in. These quarterbacks, these players, NFL players, are ruined by organizations all the time. The league churns and burns these guys. Do players fail of their own volition? Absolutely, all the time. This is it's almost equal parts. But I feel like there is a stigma around players who are selected, who are drafted, who get labeled as busts if they don't work out in their initial landing spot, because that situation, yeah, maybe the player didn't work out in the situation that they were drafted in, but what was the situation that they were drafted to? How viable, how supportive, how equipped was the situation that the player was drafted to so that the player had a reasonable chance to succeed? Organizations fail players far more often than players bust out. It's just that you can't do anything about the organizations. The teams are the teams. It's like owners, right? You can't fire an owner. You can't label a franchise a bust, even though they bust all the time. John Robinson spent 3 straight drafts, phrasing, I almost said busting out, but screwing up the NFL draft, which then put the Tennessee Titans in a situation that was completely unviable or not viable for anybody who might be dropped into that situation, a la 2024. 2024 was a non-functioning franchise that they tried to patchwork together and get the best out of, and ultimately they failed spectacularly. Ultimately, they were the worst team in football. So now, that hole is still something that you're faced with. If you're Tennessee specifically, if Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders were to be drafted here, and if those 2 players were to be drafted here with the number 1 overall pick, meaning that you stuck and you selected and you didn't get any additional draft capital and you didn't get any additional reinforcements on offense or defense on special teams that could best possibly put this quarterback in the best position to succeed, I think there's a reasonably high percentage chance that either of those 2 players, if they were drafted here with the number 1 overall selection without a sufficient support system in place, would fail. That doesn't mean that they would fail for their entire NFL careers, but I believe that if they were the number 1 pick here, they would fail because there's not enough here to support them. And I believe that of any quarterback. I believe that you are best equipped in the NFL of building out the best possible team. I believe that you are best putting yourself in a position to succeed by minimizing as much as you can, even though it's the most important position, by minimizing as much as humanly possible the burden that you're putting on the most important position. Because it is ultimately, you succeed or fail based on the level of quarterback play that you get. But what is your best way to hedge your bets against less than elite quarterback play, to have the best possible team around that player? Tannehill is an example. Jimmy Garoppolo is an example. Brock Purdy is an example. There are quarterbacks who would be lesser in lesser situations all over the place. It's incumbent upon NFL teams to figure out how to put the best possible team in position, because the best possible player against the best possible team will lose almost every time. Almost every time. It's not just Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles. The best team wins. The best team, whether it's the healthiest team, the deepest team, the most talented team, the best team, supersedes the best individual player 10 times out of 10. It's not even remotely close. There is no one player who is so excellent in the NFL that they can be consistently, keyword consistently, relied upon to just straight up will you to wins at any given point. They don't exist. There's too many other factors going on a field of play in the NFL, too many other variables that can impact their ability to single-handedly affect the game. Tom Brady wasn't capable of willing his team to win at any given point. Tom Brady is excellent. Tom Brady is the best winner we have for all time in professional football. Even he was subject quite often to his surroundings. Could he elevate them monumentally? Of course he could. Mahomes the same. But at the end of the day, the best team wins. And the process to building the best possible team is always going to be a slow burn. It's never going to be microwave results. You tried to microwave those results last year. You got significantly worse. You cut your win total in half, and you only had 6 wins to begin with. You were the worst team in football. These things don't work. Microwaving the results by putting a number 1 overall pick at quarterback on this team without sufficient support is almost assured to see that player fail. And it's not because I don't think the players are good, that like the quarterbacks. It's not because I don't think that the quarterbacks aren't capable. I think these quarterbacks are capable in the right spots. And the Titans could be the right spot if they better equip themselves to support that quarterback. If they trade out of 1 and trade back to 3 and add Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter and are able to acquire Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart, there's nothing to stop you from trading back up into the first round, teams do it all the time. If they better surround, let's take, for example, Shedeur Sanders with better talent, then I will feel better about Shedeur Sanders' ability to succeed there. If they take Shedeur Sanders number 1 overall with the roster in its current state and only 8 draft picks total on the board and only $50 million in cap space ahead of them, which is not the least amount, but it's not the most amount by a mile, I could not see. I mean, I could see a path to success, but it's like Avengers Endgame, where I always want to call him Mr. Fantastic. Doctor Strange. Dr. Strange is talking to Tony Stark. Spoiler alert. Talking to Tony Stark. And he says, you know, I've run all the simulations in my head on how we beat, it's Thanos, right? How we beat Thanos over and over and over again. I've run all the different simulations in 1,000 different metaverses and all these different things. And we win one way. One way. That's kind of the scenario that I'm looking at for these two quarterbacks. If they're taken first overall, yeah, there's a chance that they could succeed, but the percentage chance is so infinitesimal relative to best equipping yourself for success that I don't even think it's a question. And I would feel that way about any quarterback. Any quarterback on this roster, currently constructed, Mahomes couldn't win here. Really win here. Lamar couldn't win here. Burrow couldn't win here. This is a roster that is in deep disrepair. And I think it's very easy to gloss over that and say, well, quarterback will fix it all the fastest and help us, you know, make everything better quicker. No. It is more illogical to approach it that way. And I believe that you have enough sensible people in your organization right now that will also recognize the fact that they don't have to get it exactly right, and they don't have to get the franchise's future for the next 15 years right this April. It doesn't have to happen this year. It can, if they believe in the player. There's nothing to stop them from that. And if Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders is the number 1 player on Mike Borgonzi's draft board, then you must take that player number 1 overall, and you must do everything that you can to support that. But again, we talked about this. If there is even a degree of difference, if you have the number 1 overall pick by the time the draft rolls around and you don't have one of those quarterbacks graded number 1 overall, then you don't take them. That's not the way that this works. That's not the way that it should work. It does work that way sometimes, but the working part of it is a completely and totally different scenario. TK, so in this analogy, who has to die for us to be successful? Do they die or do they just like disappear? It's not like they die. I don't want to be morbid about it. But yeah, the number 1 overall pick has to disappear and has to multiply, right? It can evaporate, but then produce 3 or 4, I mean, 4 probably excessive, but 2 or 3 additional picks, and maybe even a player, if you get lucky enough, that can immediately contribute to your success. Immediately contribute to your success. That is the path forward here at this particular point in time. It's the one that takes patience. It's the one that takes into consideration the fact that the process of building does not happen in one single draft. TK says Tony Stark died in order for them to beat Thanos. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Well, who's most likely on the chopping block? I guess if we're killing careers, it's probably Callahan. But, you know, we will Curtis says we volunteer Levis for tribute. Don't be. We're killing careers. We're not killing people around here. Let's be a little more judicious than that. A to Z Sports Prime Time is made possible by the Bart Durham Injury Law Group. If you have been wronged, if you are in an automobile accident, if you have any number of issues that fall within the scope of their areas of practice, Bart Durham Injury Law is there to help you because you deserve to be paid, whether it's automobile accidents, like I mentioned, car, truck, public transportation, commercial vehicles, motorcycles. If you have a pedestrian issue, a DUI accident, rear end collisions, rollover accidents. If you are having personal injury issues, whether it be workplace incidents, product liability, all manner of things fall under the purview of Bart Durham Injury Law. Blair Durham and his team will put you in position to succeed. You can get your free consultation online today at bartdurham.com. All that to say that there's a lot of different players that can be considered in this draft. Quarterbacks are obviously the two most interesting. To me, these two quarterbacks are interesting, and I am not outright ruling them out of being drafted by the Tennessee Titans, but I do not want to see either of them drafted number 1 overall by this team, because this team is not equipped to see them succeed. Not equipped to see them succeed. Who's the safest pick in this draft? If you had to pick a player, who would you select? There's a couple of clips from the 33rd team that we're going to get to here in just a second that I find interesting, and we will discuss at length together. We'll read your comments and dive in right after I remind you that the Primetime program is also made possible by Zen Sports. Promo code ATOZTN gets you in on all the action. Zen Sports, in fact, has a new offer that our dear friends at Zen Sports texted me about earlier today. If you want to enter their grand prize, 2 VIP tickets to the men's basketball conference championship game, plus $10,000 worth of bonus bets for the conference tournament, or simply a $10,000 cash prize, you can enter at zensports.com with the promo code ATOZTN. Zensports.com/sweepstakes is where you go for the full contest rules. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem, call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 plus and in the state of Tennessee to bet at Zen Sports. Who's the safest player in this draft at this point? I really enjoyed the answer from the 33rd team's discussion, because it's probably not a player that any of you were going to select.
Mason Graham, I mean, you know, we talked about the safety of certain positions or the safety of certain, like, is Mason Graham the safest pick in this draft? Like, that dude's just a monster. He looks good at everything. I need to see what he weighs in at, because that guy cannot possibly be 320 pounds the way he moves around, which is, I think, was his listed weight at Michigan. He just looks awesome.
Mason Graham looks like an absolute game wrecker. Honestly, I think he's in the Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter discussion, and he is so disruptive. I wouldn't hate taking Mason Graham over those guys. We get into positional value and all that, but the way defensive tackles are getting paid right now, and honestly, the scarcity of it as well, they've been harder to find over the last 7 or 8 years in the NFL. So I don't hate Mason Graham even going higher than that. So I like both picks there. I'm interested in Graham's arm length, just curious. I don't think it's, big detriment, and the weight, as you mentioned, if he's like 290 versus a listed 320, that's might change a little perception, but I think it's a big week next week at the Combine for both Will Campbell and Mason Graham.
So if you're not familiar, and you should be familiar if you're paying attention to any of the draft stuff right now, Mason Graham is the defensive tackle out of Michigan. He's listed at 6'3", 320, as you heard there. He is a 3 technique who I've seen a lot of NFL comparisons to Christian Wilkins, the Raiders defensive tackle. He's got excellent effort, strength, and agility for a player that size. Tavondre Sweat is obviously an anomaly because he's probably 380 pounds. I know he said 366 when he was drafted. I respectfully think that is a little bit off from what he actually weighed. Certainly was over 366 when he declined to weigh in at the Senior Bowl, the first player in the history of the Senior Bowl to decline the weigh-in. Mason Graham, though, safe is the word that I'm using here, the safest player in this draft based on the measurables, the tape, the nature of the position, what teams are considering premium value right now, which is, if it's not quarterback play, it's the ability to disrupt the quarterback, and the fastest route to the quarterback is from the interior defensive line. It's going to be interesting to see where he actually gets drafted. Obviously, no one expects him to go over Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter or either of the quarterbacks. But safe, there is no disputing that he brings a lot to the table and will be a very good player for whichever team ends up drafting him. And the degree of difficulty is just easier. Like, it's harder for a defensive lineman to fail, right? That's why Abdul Carter and Mason Graham and a lot of these guys are going to be looked at as instant impact players, because there's just less to the positions, less that has to be dissected, diagnosed. Obviously, they have to learn scheme, they have to learn calls, they have to be able to identify checks and things on the offense to allow them to adjust and adapt. They have to be technically sound, all of these things, of course. But at the end of the day, what can you do? You can line them up and say, hey, go get him. Go get the quarterback. That's kind of, or stop the running back. Like that's what it is at the end of the day. Nuance, obviously, skill, obviously required to maximize those abilities, but the degree of difficulty, the learning curve, is far shorter for a defensive lineman than for a quarterback or a hybrid player, hybrid DB wide receiver, than somebody like Travis Hunter. It's just going to be the most effective way to get an instant impact player. It's the safest possible route. Now, maybe you're not interested in the safest possible route, even though you could certainly use good football players. Pat the Barber says Kevin Dodd certainly failed as a defensive line player. Yes, congratulations, you found the one. There are, yes, of course, any player in any draft can have personality. I don't want to call them defects. Defects is too strong a word. Can have intangible issues. Kevin Dodd's issues were not physical. Kevin Dodd's issues were, he just didn't want to be a football player. You know, it's like Sadiq Charles. Sadiq Charles gave back money, was going to be this team's starting right guard, and just decided, hey, you know, in training camp, I don't want to do this shit anymore. He ghosted everybody. Like that's a behavioral problem. That's an intangible problem. That's not something that can be measured. I mean, you know, I'm sure there's psychological testing that can measure some of this to an extent, but that's an attitude. That's the person. There is no fail-safe way, just as there's no fail-safe way to go through the draft process. There's no fail-safe way to decide what kind of person you're going to be. Just as, you know, Pat, I'm certain that there was no way, whether you're a good person or a bad person, there was no way to determine at the age that you were coming out of college what direction your life was going to head into. There are some things that can help inform that. There can be some influences in your life that you take into account or that you ignore or whatever. But at the end of the day, the person also has to want to do the job, right? And Kevin Dodd didn't want to do the job anymore. That's just what it was. Kevin Dodd was a hugely talented player. Was he on that first national championship winning squad for Clemson? I'd have to go back and look. That was the 2016? What was Derrick Henry's draft? 2016 draft was Kevin Dodd, the first pick in the second round. So with all that to say, the degree of difficulty is less to hit on a defensive lineman than on a quarterback or a wide receiver, for example. As we continue, well, actually, we've already done 37 minutes and we've been talking a great deal about this. I'd also like you to hear the 33rd team's evaluation of Cam Ward, because that's the top quarterback prospect right now. And obviously that's a great need. We're not going to ignore the quarterback situation just because I think it's ill-advised to take one of these two quarterbacks at number one overall. Obviously, that would be negligence. Before we do that, I will remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by True Math Fitness in the Gulch. Your first workout is free as a Middle Tennessee resident. No workout ever recycled or repeated. TrueMathFitness.com for your first workout free. Here is the 33rd team's analysis of the best quarterback prospect in the draft.
Is Ward versus Shedeur a case of like potential versus steady safety? You know, is that what we're dealing with when it comes to which of these two quarterbacks is your favorite?
I think that's going to be a huge part of it. And it's, look, I think Shedeur is like half safe. You know, I think there's a lot of works within the system. And, you know, it's not that he can't throw the ball down the field, but certainly not that. Cam Ward, though, brings the spectacular. I also think I'm going to say it again. He brings a little bit of that it factor on. And again, I'm not saying Shedeur doesn't, but Cam Ward reminds me a little bit of the way, Geno Smith has a little bit of that, hey, go ahead and doubt me, and Baker Mayfield. And I think we saw that from Michael Penix Jr. a little bit. So some of these guys historically where it's like, go ahead, try to doubt me. And then you have this, you go elevate this Miami team and almost make a college football playoff run. I think a lot of that adds up for Cam. And again, this isn't to say that Shedeur doesn't have elements of these things. I think those things are what people love about Cam Ward. And for every Josh Allen in college, head scratching mistake, throwback across your body, Cam Ward has the amnesia to come back and, bounce back from those plays. I think all of that adds up to the upside factor of what Cam brings to the table, and that's going to be a difference maker for a lot of teams when they're evaluating them. So yeah, I think that's why he's QB1 at this point.
They're both really interesting players, Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. And I look forward to talking to them at the Combine. That's going to be my first opportunity to interact with them next week when we head up to Indianapolis. It's still not clear as to, I don't think either of them has made at least a public decision as to whether they're going to throw at the Combine or not, which is not the most important thing. Obviously, pro days will allow them the opportunity to showcase that if they so choose. Probably a better atmosphere for them to showcase that if they so choose. And one would expect that they would throw at their pro days at minimum, if not the Combine, where things are a little more subject to variance. But at the end of the day, the interview process is as important for these two as anything else, because we know what their tape is, right? We have seen the games that they have played. In the case of Cam Ward, at Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami. We have seen Shedeur Sanders go from Jackson State to Colorado and, find the levels of success that either of them have been able to have. We understand that it's not comparing this year's quarterback class to last year's quarterback class is an already failing proposition, because I think it can skew your analysis a little bit to talk about things that just aren't available to you and how these two players measure up. I do think sometimes it's worth going back and watching players from last year's draft class prior in college, like Drake May, for example. All right, here's what I saw in Drake May that I am or am not seeing in Cam Ward, for example. Here's what I saw in Bo Nix that I am or am not seeing in Shedeur Sanders. Those kind of conversations I think can be helpful as long as you can detach yourself and say, okay, that was last year. Now let's talk about this year. These two players are going to be, fascinating to see what happens to both of them, regardless of where they land. Combine's going to be a huge part of the process. For example, there's nothing to indicate that the Titans have any that would be leaning one way or the other on either quarterbacks, because they haven't even met Cam Ward yet. And that is a huge part of that. Yeah, they can do due diligence. Yeah, they can do background work. Yeah, they can talk to people around him, but they can't talk to him yet until next week. And that is going to be something that's super important for him, not just with the Titans, but for every other team that he meets with. All right. That's going to do it for us tonight. Radio show tomorrow. Let's see what we have on the radio show tomorrow, since I have my handy-dandy schedule up. We got Stuart Mandel. Big changes coming to the world of the college football playoffs. Stuart Mandel has been passionate about that on theathletic.com. He will join us at 12:20. We'll have the opportunity for you to win prizes tomorrow at 11 o'clock with the dumbest thing in sports. So we'll look forward to having you guys a part of that conversation then from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. The install. Get your install tickets, guys. 50 tickets already sold. All right. In what did we announce that? It'll be a week tomorrow. 50 tickets have already sold. Now, we do have 250 tickets available, so there's still 200 tickets for you to get. It's not like it's the end of the world if you don't get your tickets today. But if it took us a week to sell 50 tickets, these things are going to go much faster, because I expect to make some pretty exciting announcements around the live show here in the next couple of weeks. And I want you guys to have as many opportunities to get these tickets, certainly to get the GA tickets before they sell out. There's more of the GA tickets than there are the VIP tickets. Bert will do me the courtesy of dropping the link in the live stream chat at the convenience. If you're not familiar with what the install is, it's a live broadcast 1 week removed from the Friday of the NFL draft. It's not even a week removed from the NFL draft, where Greg Cosell flies in from NFL Films, where we break down the entire free agent and draft class of the Tennessee Titans. It's a 3-hour live show for you guys. You guys get to ask Greg questions. Last year, Rand Carthon did one of the segments with us. We'll see whether we might be able to announce some special Titans attendees for the live show here in the next couple of weeks. But go online, 1045thezone.com, click on that link that Bert just dropped in the chat, and get your tickets to the install live show today. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. See you tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. on 1045 The Zone. Go home.